Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Saur, Darkchylde, and welcome back to Let's Replay Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney. Last time, we were just told of a new trial simulation case that Phoenix Wright is putting together. And our client, of course, is accused of murder. After a while of investigations, learning of our client being the daughter of the victim, and that the victim was a forger of paintings. And under the paintings were all rough sketches of 3 cases that Apollo Justice has done so far. What does this mean for her intrepid lawyer? Well, hopefully we'll get some answers in the first day trial of this case. Let us begin. October 8th, 2026, 9:48 p.m. a.m. District Court, Defendant Lobby Number 4. Good morning.
So you're Vera, right? I'm Trucy. Trucy Wright. That's right with a W. But not right, right? So, we're on your side. Can you please tell us anything? Please?
Good morning. She speaks!
Not bad, not bad. But I think you do better with a little smile, don't you? You're so pretty. You need to sell yourself. Oh, you know?
Trucy, let's take it easy for starters. Thank you for taking my case. Okay. Well, that's a start, I guess. There she goes with that nail polish again.
That's great, really. It's so cultured.
Want to try?
Ooh, really?
Girls. The victim, Drew Misham, was a forger. And a stolen painting was found in his studio. A life of crime? Really? And maybe one that led to his death. Well, we will now begin the trial of Vera Misham.
Is the judge okay? His voice is all raspy. He's looking around all nervous like.
The repercussions of today's trial most likely be felt for a long time, and may indeed alter our legal system forever. Spoiler warning, it doesn't. Today is a test of the justice system. and the first step towards a new who order in our courts.
Daddy's secret mission.
The journalists will function like a jury. The jurists will function like a jury. It is hoped their inclusion will help our courts to better reflect the people's will. Why aren't there any jurists in the courtroom? 3 closed-circuit cameras watch this courtroom at all times. The jurist has access to everything that transpires. Jurist, judge well and judge cool.
Now see here, Prosecutor Gavin. I was going to say that.
My apologies, Judge.
Jurist, today, judge today's trial coolly, if you would be so kind.
The jurists are unbound by the letter of the law. They don't affect the trial with evidence, but by their feelings. And we're about to find out just what effects they're going to have.
Very well. Prosecutor Gavin, the details of the case, if you would.
The victim is the painter Drew Misham. He was killed in his own studio. His coffee was poisoned. By whom, you ask? By none other than the defendant, Vera Misham. There wasn't any poison in the coffee. Stug! Someone has been doing their homework. Indeed, poison was not present in the coffee, but on the mug itself.
The mug? Residue was found on the rim, I see.
The autopsy report describes the manner of our victim's death.
The court accepts this as evidence. According to this report, the victim's death was caused by etroquinline poisoning.
The criminal compound that does not occur naturally. Lethal dosage is a mere 0.002 milligrams. A touch of etroquinline in the body is the touch of the Reaper's scythe.
Very well. Prosecutor Gavin, you may present your witness.
I have for you today a simple man for a simple case. A man who witnessed the murder in its entirety. That journalist, no doubt. Will the witness state his name and occupation?
Right. Well, for starters, my name is Spark Brushell. My job is a lone observer of the world.
In other words, a freelance journalist, right?
Ahem. If you don't mind, I'd like to state something for the record.
Yes, Mr. Brushhill?
I dislike conclusions, specifically jumping to the aspect of conclusions. Prosecution makes Park Sandbox of endless desert waste. End quote.
But you are a journalist. You said so yourself yesterday.
Well, that's true, yes. But you must understand, I stand before you today as a man with a dream. I'm offering you my testimony in exchange for an exclusive rights of the story. Scoop turns Mr. Brushhill into Mr. Brushhill. End quote.
Let's hear your testimony then, shall we?
A simple case, hey, Mr. Gavin? For me, the jury is still out. The journalist's story.
I visited the studio around 9 that night to do the interview. The first outsider to enter the Atelier. Journalistic history made. End quote. His daughter brought us coffee right after we started. And you know what happens next? Star falls! End quote. No one else entered the room besides her the whole time.
That does sound like a simple case. Unless you were the one who poisoned him.
What are you saying, Judge?
Need I remind you the cameras are rolling today? I felt the need to be a bit dramatic.
You didn't do it, did you?
Me do a thing like that? Come on, that's like newsmaker making the news, end quote. Or even contemporary witch hunt, end quote. I know, wild accusations rock courtroom, end quote.
Rock indeed. Prosecutor Gavin sure looks like he's having fun. I'm so happy for him.
Very well. Mr. Justice, your cross-examination, please.
I visited the studio around 9 that night to do an interview.
9 at night? Isn't that a little late for an interview?
If the great painter Drew Misham says come at 9, believe you me, I go at 9. The first and, as it turned out, last interview with such a prolific painter.
Right. Can you tell us what it was like when you arrived?
The first outsider to enter a Altair. Journalistic history made, end quote.
You were the first reporter to enter in Drew's studio?
Positeri, he will look back on that night as a turning point in journalistic history. A basically insignificant step for all mankind. But a giant step for that Brusho guy, end quote.
If no one on the outside ever has access to the studio, then it would serve to reason that the deed was done by an insider. By which he means Vera did it. So, how did you epoch-making interview go?
His daughter brought us coffee right after we started.
Would you mind being a little more specific?
Oh, let me tell you, I enjoy a cuppa. In fact, it all began when I was... That's not what I meant!
I believe I know what Air Forehead was driving at. This coffee the victim was served. Did anyone other than the defendant touch it?
Right, that.
That's what I was going to say, really!
Well now, if who've got a question to ask, you best straight up ask it. That's what I call that's what I tell all the new recruits, several times if necessary. Right for a grade schooler. That's my motto. Which isn't...
Who touched the coffee?
Don't know. I was in the back, heck, looking at the studio's equipment when she served it.
And what happened next?
You know what happened next. Star falls, end quote.
Oops. That was a press, not a present. Oops. My mistake. I jumped the gun on that one. What's this about a star falling? Star falls, huh? It's kind of like an old telegram. Send money, over.
Zowie! You don't know? That's like a journalism code word. An important personage passes away. A star falls, get it?
I guess, but there's no gravity in space, is there? I wouldn't think stars could fall, really. Does this matter?
Hoo boy! This is good stuff! Good stuff! How about star breaks? Nah, let's punch. I know! Star dies! Nah,
Lex imagination.
of course!
Hers. You could go with Drew dies.
Straight to the point. I like it.
I think we need to hear more about, well, something a little more substantial. Let's see. Star's coffee, perhaps? You say Mr. Misham had the coffee, too. But did you actually see him drink the coffee?
Course! He who sees it wins, but he who says it wins bigger, end quote. I live by a man see, he dog, hug and writes about it world, yet?
Yet?
I guess I can't say I saw him drink it, really. He had one so-called sip, if that. Man puts lips to mug, drinks, end quote.
That poison is quite virulent, I hear.
My stomach did a so-called somersault. Since I gulped down that coffee without so much as a second glance at it. Wait, maybe something there. Some kind of so-called trick. Anyone who ventures a guess, for the record.
Does this guy have a pause button?
Well, Mr. Justice, did you find that testimony important?
Yes, very important. The victim drinks his coffee, then immediately fell over.
Oh, yes. Yes, you can go to the press with that one.
Your Honor, this is vital piece of information. Please add it to the testimony.
Very well. The witness will add this to his testimony.
Vital, right. He had one sip, that's it. Next moment, he was on the floor.
You know what I have a problem with a particular property of the poison and use atroquilline.
Oh, Prosecutor Gavin was quite clear about that poison. A lethal dosage of 0.002 milligrams paralyzes the central nervous system. If you drank that, even you, Mr. Justice, would be reduced to a quivering pile.
Why are you using me for an example? Unfortunately, we aren't told everything. There was a vital omission in Prosecutor Gavin's information.
An omission?
Etraquilin is a virulent, as he says. But death doesn't come upon ingestion, not immediately. That's because etraquilin is slow-acting.
Slow-acting?
What?
According to one forensic scientist, it's one of the most virulent poisons, but it is absorbed into the body astonishingly slowly. It takes about 15 minutes from the time of ingestion for the adverse effects to show. If we suppose that at the moment Mr. Misham sipped the coffee, when he sealed his fate, then he would have had time left to enjoy his last sip of Joe.
Order! Order! What is the meaning of this? If what the defense says is correct, why? That contradicts the entire testimony we've just heard.
Well, Mr. Brushill, anything to say on the record?
Slow acting. SLOWACT. It was virulent, alright. Even then, it had already begun digging its claws into the journalists.
He's working up on his scoop. It's Brushill, yeah? Yeah, boy. Yeah, Brushill. Let's take a trip back down memory lane.
Huh?
Did the victim really die the instant he took a sip? Think it over. This is vital.
You know what I think? I think that was a not so subliminal suggestion, end quote.
I admit it does cause a problem if he died when you said he died. I would be forced to say of wider shine into my simple cause. And you would be forced to say farewell to your article.
Come again?
You can't write a story based on conjecture, can you? And as the case drags on, other reports will pick up the scent. And you'll be forced to kiss your exclusive scoop goodbye.
Scoop? Scoop?
Ew.
Look, wait, just wait, a second, just 1 second.
We're waiting! Out with it!
I think I just recalled a so-called important detail. A revival of recollection, end quote. A story survival, end quote.
Attorney utterly confused, end quote.
Actually, I did notice something when I visited the studio. I've heard of poison that takes its sweet time, see?
But not what I've been saying for the last few minutes, apparently.
Mr. Brushill, are you saying you noticed something that explains what happened?
You bet I am. The antidote for a poisonous contradiction, end quote, you might say.
Or, I still have no idea what you're talking about, end quote, I might say.
I figured it out, but only after an in-depth interview. See, thanks to my journalism skills, I know who poisoned that coffee.
Order! Order! Order!
As far as I can tell, the witness is standing by his testimony that Mr. Misham died the instant after he drank.
Of course I'm standing by my testimony. And my dream of exclusive rights to the story. Ugh.
I suppose it was too much to hope for.
What was?
Of course he wouldn't choose a simple case, not him.
Him?
Phoenix Wright! Who else? Ashdog! Herr Brushell, report for us, if you would. What is it that you noticed?
This court is a critical trial of the juris system. I'm afraid no room for doubt is permissible. You will testify to the court about what you noticed.
What Brushell noticed.
When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Misham was at his desk. He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope. I thought nothing of it at the time, of course. But now that I think about it, what if he was writing a suicide note?
A suicide note?
Yes, he had this look on his face. Man's face inscrutable, who as quadratic equilibrium. End quote.
Suicide? Poor Mr. Misham. But that means Vera's innocent. Would someone commit suicide in the middle of an interview?
Oh.
Very well. You may begin your cross-examination.
When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Misham was at his desk.
Was there anyone at the studio other than Mr. Misham?
Well, his daughter Vera, of course.
Was anyone besides Mr. Misham and Vera present?
Not a single one. Not a cat. Not a rat. Not even a mouse.
The only person who didn't belong at that studio there was you, wasn't it, Mr. Brushell?
I know what you're doing. I know your game. Attorney uses classic Resman phenomenon ploy. End quote.
If you intend to suggest that this reporter is the suspect, I'm sure you also intend to present evidence supporting that assertion, correct? In the meantime, let's move along, shall we?
He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope.
So he put the letter away when he saw you?
Early reporter gets the worm, end quote. That's my secret.
I'm not sure I follow.
It's the night of the interview. I arrived 15 minutes ahead of schedule. The handle turns and the door opens. I barge in.
Are you sure that's okay to do? I mean, isn't that unlawful entry, really?
Mr. Misham sure seemed to think so. You should have seen him. He crammed his letter into a yellow envelope as fast as he could. I know a secret when I spot one, and that was one!
It does seem significant. Well, Mr. Justice?
I wonder. Does this ring a bell? Ring as something important? Yes. Yes, it does. The defense finds this testimony vital, Your Honor.
Very well. Please add it to your testimony then.
Hey, why not? My account comes free of charge. It was a yellow envelope.
Oh,
I heard it was left at the crime scene.
as it just so happens, there was a single letter in a desk drawer at the scene of the crime. In a red envelope.
What?
Prosecutor Gavin. Yes. Was a yellow envelope found at the scene of the crime? Unfortunately, no. But forehead. It's easy to mistake the color of an envelope. I guess, but not this envelope. You see, it was postmarked already, 7 years ago.
Well, Mr. Brushhill?
I can explain that. Drew, right? He wanted to get that envelope letter in the Drew, right? He wanted to get that letter in an envelope pronto. Get it out of sight of my beady eyes, right? So he grabbed the nearest envelope and crammed away.
And what about the whole red and yellow envelope contradiction, chump?
Well, Mr. Justice, have you anything to say to the witness's claim?
The night of the incident, that night, the victim put a letter he had been writing in a red envelope. Oh, it's impossible. That's impossible. Ah, I like your expression. So full of confidence. It's simple, really. As it just so happens, the defense team investigated the contents of this envelope with the assistance of a forensic scientist. What? Note that this letter is addressed to Drew Misham.
Oh?
Why would he address the letter to himself? Let alone send a suicide note to himself?
I've been scoped!
Order! 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 Mr. Brushhill, can you explain this to the court?
Oh my. Hey, how could I have forgotten? I suppose this happens to the best of us. Reporter gets old, forgets a lot. End quote.
I'm still waiting for an explanation, Mr. Brushhill.
Well, that's the thing, see? After he puts this letter in the envelope, Mr. Misham sat there searching his desk drawer for something.
His desk drawer?
Yes, a stamp. A so-called postage stamp. End quote.
A stamp? Whatever for?
Well, to mail his letter. What else? And then, why yes, I think I saw him put it in this letterbox. Yes, it was a yellow envelope, and he put it in that box.
Well, apparently this yellow...
Oh, how I wish it did. I think if that were a suicide note, what a story! Star writes suicide note, Inferno reporter. false, end quote.
Ahem. As I was saying, that has nothing to do with this case. That said,
Yes, Your Honor.
it makes me wonder about the contents of that red envelope. $100,000 is quite a good deal of money.
So this was from 7 years ago, yeah?
So, am I finished? Here, I mean. Am I finished here? I was thinking of, going home to start writing.
I hate to state what should be pretty obvious to anyone, but when you catch the scent of a story, you make that, rather unique face.
Ah, come on! Attorney has active imagination. Little else, end quote.
Even I've noticed something, and my eyes aren't what they used to be. I'm starting to understand what all this perceiving stuff is about.
Judge has an active imagination. End quote.
Please continue with your testimony. Tell us about the scent of a story.
Hey, I'm the one asking the questions here, usually. Actually, it took a bit of work to get the thumbs up on the interview. Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote. The story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago. That red envelope probably had something to do with it. Say what you will, but Drew's talent wasn't without compare.
So you threatened to go to the press with this story? That's how you got to your interview? Blackmail?
Well, yes. I mean, no! I wasn't exactly black. It wasn't exactly black. I mean, I'm not...
Something wrong, Mr. Brushhill?
Look. This is my story. My tippet. Journalist's info is livelihood. End quote.
I see.
Well, you have me chatting away in here. What's going on out there? What if some wily Wordsworth or Sally Scooper gets wind of my story? They could be going to the press while I'm here going to waste.
The court feels your pain, Mr. Brushhill. Mr. Justice, let's pick up the pace.
A certain case? 7 years ago? Wait, 7 years ago? Oh, bracelet! And I know just the testimony.
Actually, it took a bit of work to get the thumbs up for the interview. Reporter leverages story, gets his interview. End quote. The story concerned a case from 7 years ago. That red envelope probably had something to do with it. Say what you will, but Drew, whose talent was without compare.
use the bracelet on this testimony, and I apologize in advance because this guy's nervous habit when you use the bracelet is very disgusting and gross.
Say what you will. Drew's talent.
Sweat much, Mr. Brushhill?
Yeah, well, a man can't help his glands, you know?
It's more than that, Mr. Brushhill. When Mr. Misham's talent was mentioned, you suddenly begin to sweat buckets. You're hiding something about his talent.
What? That's ridiculous!
Evidence time. Let's see how Mr. Misham's true talent lay. It just so happens I had the evidence showing the talent mentioned in that letter. Is this the right one? This painting was found in Mr. Misham's studio. There were two problems with this painting. The first is it wasn't painted by Mr. Misham. The second is that there was another painting in the studio, which looked exactly like this one, except it was only half done. Then we have a letter discussing a payment of $100,000, which suggests a certain business operation. A business operation, the business of making forgeries.
Ah!
That is all, Your Honor.
Everyone, please, everyone. Can we keep this private, please? This is my story, my scoop.
Forgery! That's a serious crime!
Drew Misham is known as an artist these days. But there were rumors he dabbled in other kinds of art until a few years back.
Another art? Meaning forgery?
Drew Misham was talented, alright. Talented at making precise, detailed fakes. A fact that certain criminal elements were quick to discover.
Criminal elements? What? You can't seriously be talking about...
Exactly. I'm talking about a forger. I'm talking about forging evidence. The rumors started circulating 7 years ago.
7 years ago? So, are we to understand that this letter, this payment of $100,000 was for...
Exactly. Forge evidence, net's tidy profit, end quote.
Order! Why, it's like our victim was living a double life.
Aha! This is my chance! So the victim had ties to the criminal world, right? He could have had plenty of enemies we know nothing about. This is my first time hearing of this criminal world. We certainly found no criminal connections when we conducted our investigation. But how do you explain all this money? You have to admit there's a possibility of some illegal activities here. But there is no proof tying this letter to our case. Our case was, and remains, simple for the beginning. Only the defendant could have poisoned that mug that night. And you, of course.
Hey, the only thing I poison is my pen when I'm writing reviews.
Mr. Brushhill, your testimony to this point has been quite unreliable. It doesn't speak well of your reporting acumen.
What are you talking about? My journalism sold. You could stand an elephant on him. End quote.
In any case, let's hear a summarized recap of your testimony. If we can ascertain the situation in that studio from the recap, the trial is over.
Apollo, what's he talking about?
The cross-examination showed Mr. Brushhill didn't have reason or means to poison him. As long as there's no other suspects, then the killer had to be Vera, so that's it. That's what. This next testimony is our last chance.
Mr. Brushhill, your testimony, please.
The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She admitted as much herself. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug. And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter.
A nice testimony, clear, succinct, and without room for doubt.
Ah, shucks. You really think so?
I believe this clarifies the situation that night. Very well, Mr. Justice, you may begin your final cross-examination.
Right! I still have one trump card left to play. And I won't let this trial end until I use it. Oh boy.
The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant.
But that doesn't prove Vera poisoned it. How many times have we heard that one there, forehead? The poison reached the victims via that coffee mug. And from where did that coffee come from? Not to beat a dead horse again and again, but perhaps you could fill us in.
I'm on it. You need a horse beat? I'm your man. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She admitted it as much herself.
And you witnessed her pouring the coffee?
Of course I didn't witness it. When she came in with that tray, the coffee was already poured and steaming.
Let us not forget, Yet the defendant has admitted to pouring the coffee herself. I heard her statement. I poured, I served, and I killed. What? That last part was just a little joke. I don't think I'm going to get anywhere with this coffee mug. Let's find another weak spot in this case.
The only other thing that touched Drew's lips was during the interview was that mug.
You're sure about that?
Well, to be really, really precise, I was busy gobbling mint and candies the whole time.
Yet at the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance. Hints of mint filled the room. And no mint residue was found. It was a long shot anyways. Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than that coffee?
Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof.
The possibility he is there. I can feel it. Just maybe he not prove it. Not yet. And the possibility isn't going to cut it. Not now. Mr. Misham ingested that poison via the root. Not yet. It can't be proven. I do believe our little forehead is growing up. Pity. We like the rash youthful forehead best. Another hole in this case that needs plugging before I can prove anything. But first things first, I better uncover the weak spot before I try it to strike again.
On with the cross-examination.
But nothing left that studio.
Oh, after he died.
Nothing.
Not one thing? You're sure?
Yep, sure as sure can be. Well, with one exception.
One exception? What?
Journalist as Spark Brushel does interview. Leaves studio, end quote. Come on! It's a joke, get it? Not funny, I know, but still.
Did something leave the studio that night? Why does that sound familiar? Where have I heard something like that before?
Now that we've proven our witness is a comedian of sorts, I'd like to turn to our defense attorney before returning to the testimony. Do you have any idea of what, if anything, might have left the studio that night?
Just one thing. I think one thing might very well have left the studio that night, actually. A certain something that has vanished from the crime scene.
By which you mean
Something other than our witness? Of course. Don't tell me. Vera Misham? Believe me, any comic relief I may provide is entirely unintentional.
Then let's see what you've got for us, Mr. Justice.
Well, this thing wasn't at the scene of the crime, so I can't show it to you. But I do have evidence that shows how it could have been taken from the scene. This is the only link between that studio and the outside world.
A letterbox?
What did Mr. Brushill just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter.
Yeah, I said that. And yeah, it was true.
Furthermore, you went on to tell us that he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox.
Ah!
But that very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night the yellow envelope disappeared. Ah, yes, intriguing. An envelope that disappeared from the scene of the crime. Of course, this changes nothing. Huh?
He has a point, Mr. Justice. What we're trying to figure out is how the poison got into Mr. Misham.
Oops, I accidentally skipped over that. Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems really important to me.
Very well then. Witness will add this to his testimony.
You got it.
I still think this fails to change anything, yeah, forehead. I wouldn't be so sure. A letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. This is exactly the opening I'm looking for. We got a new testimony, but we're gonna come back to that. I need to go back to statement 3.
The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug.
You're sure about that?
Well, to be really, really precise,
Yeah, we already read all this. I can prove it now. Proof is possible. Here goes nothing. You do understand what we need, yeah? Proof, Air Forehead, not possibilities. Of course. And Prosecutor Gavin, I hope you understand. I'm ready to give you that proof. What did you say? I have proof of the disappearing envelope.
I saw him writing a letter. I did.
Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume.
Of course, which means that envelope had a stamp on it.
A stamp? Ah!
As we all know, stamps come with dry glue on the back. In order to use that glue, you have to wet it by licking the stamp.
Objection!
No one worth talking to actually licks stamps in this day and age. Even if you wanted to talk to him, you couldn't. He's dead after all. Okay, so we lick the stamp. But wait! How does that explain the atracylin on the rim of the coffee mug? If he licked the back of the poison stamp, the poison would get on his tongue, yes? that would then happen to be if he put the coffee mug to his mouth, Those traces on the mug weren't the killer's doing. It was the other way around.
What?
The coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Misham. Mr. Misham poisoned the coffee mug himself.
Order! But that doesn't it?
Recall if you would. Atroquilin is he's slow-acting poison, yes? The poison entered his body when he put the stamp on the envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched his lips to that cup of joe.
Have you something to add, Mr. Brushhill?
Uh-oh. His nose is picking up another scent.
As I believe I mentioned earlier. Well, that's the thing, see? After he put his letter in the envelope, Mr. Misham him sat there searching his desk drawer for something. Yes, a stamp! A so-called postage stamp! End quote. But you know, I don't seem to remember him ever finding one.
Maybe he just ran out?
Incidentally, he searched the desk drawer at the time at the scene of the crime. There were no stamps, not a single one.
That does pose a question. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with the poison?
Actually, I'm glad no other stamps were found. It makes proving the stamp he used was poison possible. Good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place?
Well, let's hear what the defense has to say anyway. Where's your evidence that proves the existence of a poisoned stamp? Well, that's certainly a cute little frame, but by little, I mean really little.
It was on the victim's desk, Your Honor. Quite empty, as you can see for yourself. I noticed that too during my investigation. So what? Apparently you weren't as observant as you should have been. You see, when you saw this frame, it was missing something quite important.
Missing something?
Yes, a pale bluish stain on the inside of the frame. Atroquilin residue.
What? Why wasn't I told about this?
The frame is only 2 inches square. The face of the frame is even smaller. Maybe 1 inch wide at most. You aren't saying... Oh, but I am. Tell me, what fits in such a small frame? A commemorative stamp, perhaps?
Order! The poison stamp was in this frame?
Impossible!
Prosecutor Gannon!
Why would he put something like that on a desk? Don't tell me he used it there so that he could commit suicide if the mood stuck.
You know, can I say something? I had a thought, see?
What? Mr. Brushhill, please stop jittering about around like that?
The victim was a forger, right? There's a lot of money in that line of work.
Forger forges. Oop. Actually, I don't mind anymore. This episode's going far too long anyway. So, the poison stamp might have been the murder weapon aimed at him. Oh, Rich. That's Rich. Leave the ridiculous flights of fancy to that Gavin's song lyrics, please. Finally, something we agree on. The stamp was a murder weapon? Nonsense! Murder is a simple business. No one would go to such lengths. No one. Oh, I disagree. Come again? Recall, if you would, the victim's reclusive lifestyle. Drew Misham hid from the world. He avoided meetings. His only contact with the outside world was the mail.
The mail?
Now, if you wanted to kill someone you couldn't meet, but you knew who read letters, a stamp would be the perfect weapon. Ridiculous. Where's your proof? I want proof. Show us evidence that this poison stamp was sent to him as a murder weapon. I might not have evidence per se, but things are finally starting to come together. What is it, Apollo? Your fists are trembling. I think I know what happened, but I don't believe it. But I can see it. I think I know how Mr. Misham was killed.
Well, fill us in, Mr. Justice.
A certain piece of evidence points to the truth, Your Honor. I can show you the evidence. I can show you how someone with the intent to kill sent Mr. Misham a stamp of death.
Isn't this the envelope? The one from 7 years ago?
Think about it. Think about the text of the letter again. There were 2 pages in the envelope. This is page 1. And this is page 2. And I want to draw your attention to perhaps one phrase in particular. Send in the enclosed envelope with the enclosed stamp within 3 days. The enclosed stamp, Your Honor.
Ah!
In other words, if I have this straight, the stamp, the poison, on the stamp, lick, lick, gasp, end quote.
Now, what if he had done exactly as the letter asked? He would sign the document and put it in the envelope and put the stamp on it, right? Then he would put it in this letterbox. 15 minutes. It wouldn't have elapsed between affixing the stamp and mailing the letter. But the clock started ticking, and when the time came, he drew his last breath. And the murder weapon would be taken away from the scene.
Quite conveniently, thanks to the postal system.
Such a splendid imagination you have, Forehead. Let me confirm one thing with you, if I might. So, this poison stamp was inside this envelope from 7 years ago, yeah? Is that what you'd have us believe, really? Well, it is a little bit of a stretch, but there's a possibility. Yes, a very small possibility. How small, I wonder? A poison stamp in this envelope? And a stamp hint that's become a murder weapon? How do you intend to prove this seeming coincidence? Well, it's been 7 years ago, and we don't even know who sent that letter. And your answer is silence? I see. Very well. I move to... It's not nice to pick on the Fräulein, Clavier. Emma? Well, like my Christoph Gavin impersonation? Did I sound like him? Don't quit your day job. Don't you have a crime scene to look after, Fräulein Detective? Someone had to come dig you out of the mess you've been making at this case. Mess? You know, none of this would happen if you just trusted in science a little more. You can find out if that stamp was in that envelope easy. Care to explain yourself, Fräulein Detective? Glare at me all you want, but science is on my side. It's all right in the residue, right? That's right! The poison reaction detection spray.
Produce the red envelope at once. You can open it on the authority of the court. Well, would you look at that?
No mistaking it. That's atroquinolin residue.
I don't believe it. The murder weapon from the past. Now, 7 years later, it bears its fang at last.
Absolutely outrageous. Tell me why. Why didn't this murder take place 7 years ago? Well, there's one possibility. Maybe Mr. Misham figured it out?
Figured what out?
He realized that the person who sent that letter wanted him dead. So he sent a reply with a different stamp.
And put this decisive evidence in a frame? You're still here?
Can I get a statement here for the record? I, Spark, Razor Toothbrush Hill, claim this scoop. All is mine. Drew Misham killed in cold blood. By sender of 7-year-old letter. End quote. No. Maybe something more like succinct. Star falls after 7-year delay. End quote.
Order, order, order! I see no room for further argument here. Though I admit this is all coming as quite a shock. To think that the murder weapon reached his mouth after 7 years. stamp is, it gets straight to the afterlife. End quote.
Uh-oh, I think the witness is a bad influence on our judge.
I see no need to further debate on this matter. The sender of that letter 7 years ago could hardly have been our defendant.
Apollo. I think we just won.
Very well. This court finds the defendant.
Is this the bright future of our legal system?
Prosecutor Gavin?
A ticket to the afterlife from 7 years ago? Tickets from Gavin's her show are invalid after 2 weeks.
But that doesn't make sense any other way.
It boggles my mind that so many people haven't noticed this. There's a factual contradiction in Air Forehead's claim. A contradiction? The poison stamp was placed in this envelope 7 years ago, whereupon it was framed until now. If that's the case, then why would Drew Misham have done what he did? Emma explained that. He must have realized it was poisoned. Therein lies the rub. 7 years ago, the forger, Drew Misham, sends a trap, then puts the stamp in a frame. I do not debate this, but this begs the question. Why, 7 years later, did he use that stamp on the night of the murder? Surely you don't mean to suggest that Mr. Misham simply forgot? He put the murder weapon in a frame on his desk for 7 years and forgot? You expect us to believe he sprang a trap on himself?
While I admit this is quite shocking myself, it does seem highly unlikely that he would fall afoul of a trap that had been sitting on his desk for 7 years.
Apollo? I don't think we're winning anymore. I'm glad to see that we're back in the real world now. Welcome back to reality. We've been waiting for you. Okay, then how do you explain the poison stamp that was in this envelope? The poison stamp? Where exactly is this poison stamp again? Have you brought it to the court for us? I see no proof that such thing ever existed. What about the atraquilin residue, huh? Oh, I agree. That does seem to be atraquilin residue. But Air Forehead, it's certainly no stamp. Yeah, but even if your precious poison stamp did exist, Drew Misham never would have used it. That is all.
I believe we've come to a conclusion again.
Apollo, we were wrong the whole time? I can't believe it. The poison traces match up. It can't be a coincidence.
I'd like to bring some closure to this issue sometime this year. Mr. Justice?
Yes, Your Honor?
Let's review the facts and see where we stand. 7 years ago, Drew Misham received the red envelope. There were traces of the poison quinine on the document inside that envelope. A similar trace was also found at the scene of the crime, on this tiny picture frame. The defense, as indicated, hid the possibility of a yellow envelope. An envelope that left the scene of the crime came with the poison stamp on it.
Yes, but even if this envelope contained a poison stamp, and Drew Misham, knowing this, put it in a frame, he never would have used that stamp.
I'm afraid you are right. Which means there is a fatal flaw in the defense's case.
I haven't been on the wrong track this whole time. I'm sure of it. Traces of etroquilin. The envelope, the frame. And Drew Misham's mysterious death. They're all connected somehow.
Well, Mr. Justice, do you have a conclusion for us?
The defense stand by its case, Your Honor. We've seen that the logical outcome of the evidence makes no sense. Which means that one of our clues must be a fake. Ah, a fake clue? Fascinating. And if we find this fake clue, your wild fantasies will prove quite reasonable, yeah? A fake clue that's thrown us off the poison trail this whole time is none other than Drew Misham.
The victim was a fake clue? I'm afraid I don't understand.
I'll explain. We have an envelope, a frame, and a mug, linked by poison. All that makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the victim himself. Congratulations, you've completely lost me. So, the fake evidence is none other than the master of fake himself, a forger. That makes a good story. I'll give you that. The fake clue, fakes, forgeries. Ah! I know that face. That's the I just had an idea face. I don't know if I'm right, but I'm going with it anyway. What if our forger is a fake? Come again. 7 years ago, our forger sniffed a trap and stepped aside. 7 years passed. Now the forger stumbles into that very same trap and dies. Why?
That's what I want to know.
Because the forger who was killed was a fake. Here we go again. The victim was a fake. One forger smelled a trap. One forger fell into the trap. That's two forgers, and one of them was a fake. Order, order, order! So, you are telling us that Drew Misham, the victim, was a fake? Well, if he was the fake, who was the real forger? You better not be claiming there was some kind of switcheroo.
I'm afraid you're going to have to back up your story. Mr. Justice, show us just who the real Drew Misham was.
If Drew Misham wasn't the real forger, there's only one other person who could have been. Understood, Your Honor. Forger Drew Misham himself was a forgery. The real forger was... There can be only one explanation, really. The real identity of the forger, known as Drew Misham, is none other than... his only daughter, Vera Misham. Order! 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 Mr. Justice, this is going on a limb, even for you! I kinda agree. I mean, Vera, a forger? Let's consider it before you write it off entirely. If you look at the paintings in the studio, one fact becomes quite clear. Forgery had been taking place at that studio for quite some time. The forger wasn't caught in that trap 7 years ago. This can only mean that the one who was caught in the trap wasn't the forger.
Well, actually that does make a certain kind of sense.
One more thing. Only 2 sets of fingerprints were found in the forger's studio. Drew Misham's and Vera Misham's. If we know that Drew Misham wasn't the forger, that leaves only one possibility. By process of elimination, the forger was Vera Misham. Well, fascinating.
Vera Misham, you've been paying attention to this trial so far?
Let's just ask her and be done with it, shall we? Who are you? Who is the forger, Drew Misham? Was that an expression of emotion I saw on her face? She's staring holes into Prosecutor Gavin's face. I'm used to being stared by Frolins, believe me. Though they usually talk to me too. Tell us, were you the one who forged those works of art? Yes.
So the forger Drew Misham was you?
Yes, it was me.
What? What?
The court was in an uproar, and it wasn't calming down. We had to break for a 10-minute recess. To be continued! Oh my god, what is going on here with this case? Vera Misham, the forger? What's going on? Find out next time and let's replay Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney. Thank you for joining me to the end. I hope you enjoyed this series. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment if you want. Ring that bell to be notified when our next video comes out. All this helps my channel to grow so you have more videos to enjoy. We do new videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and occasionally Saturday and Sundays. Till the next video, this is Saur Darkchylde, signing off. Have a good night, folks.